All right, here are my brief thoughts on Russell Brand and the allegations regarding him. I think it's well known. In fact, it's admitted by Russell Brand himself that earlier in his life he was a degenerate. He was a drug addict. He womanized, and he did all kinds of likely very sleazy things. It also seems likely that he possibly, you know, if you're in a drug-addled haze, you maybe have done things that you don't remember. So I don't rule anything out as far as the allegations go. That said, I do think you'd be very naive to ignore the timing of all of this. And it does seem like one can say that it's a hit job on Russell Brand, regardless of the veracity of the claims. Now, how do I justify that? How do I reconcile those two things? Well, these stories, these allegations, are all coming out in this form. Just a bunch of different stories. They're all being released all at the same time, and they're all from, as I understand it, anonymous sources. And the fact that this is stuff that took place a long time ago, that does not undermine the seriousness of the charges. But why were these kept in abeyance for so long, and why have they been all unrolled upon us? Why now is this report, which is like a sort of bludgeoning of this happened, he did this to this woman, he did this to this woman, he did this to this woman, on and on down the line, when there was not really even a whisper of any of these things prior to just now. That demonstrates to me that the, whatever you want to call them, the powers that be, have are using this opportunity to try to take Russell Brand down with this hit job. In other words, it's politically motivated because of the stances that Russell Brand has taken in recent years, and the fact that he's gone against the establishment in numerous ways and incurred their wrath in numerous ways. So it seems to me that those two things can be true at once. These charges could be true for all I know, or they might not be true, or some of them might be true and others might not be true. But at the same time, these the timing of the release of this whole thing, to me, is highly suspect. And the fact that all of these things are being released at once is highly suspect. It would seem like, if this were taking a more natural course of things, you would have an accuser here speaking out in this year, whatever year in the past, and then that story sort of getting, running its course through the news, and then, eventually vanishing as a news story when other news stories come up, as the news is always, in flux. And then you'd hear about something else, and then you would. It would seem like that would be the natural course of things, rather than nothing, and then pow, or just an avalanche of story after story after story. So even if the worst is true, And the worst may be true because, while I like Russell Brand, while I find him charming, and I think everybody does, I think he's, undeniably, indisputably one of the more charming people that you would ever meet. And that's a big part of his success, is his personality. Even if you don't like him, even if you think he's kind of a little much, even if you kind of find his personality to be over the top, I know that if you met him, I know that I'll just speak for myself. I know that if I met him and talked to him, I would be charmed, even though I'm not usually, he's not the kind of person I would typically, I'm not typically drawn to, very loud, extremely extroverted sorts of people, but he pulls it off through his personality and his natural charm. He's good at getting people to like him, in spite of the fact that there's so much to, when you just look at him, you think, God, who is this freak? But he wins you over with his charm, with the personality that he has. But again, we know that he lived the life of a degenerate. We know that is true, and his claim right now is that these charges are that all of his affairs with women were all consensual, and so he refutes the charges that suggest otherwise. So that suggests that he forced himself on women on certain occasions. I don't. How do you get to the bottom of any of these things, especially when it's years later, especially when you have anonymous accusers? And I know it's not easy to, if some rich and famous celebrity abuses you in some way, it's not easy to come out and show your face, and so forth. I'm aware of that, and I'm sensitive to that fact. But at the same time, there is something about facing a wall of anonymous accusations that seems highly suspect. Now, I think, I might have said this before here. I'm not sure if I have or not. My suspicion is, even like with a Bill Cosby case, which I do think that probably most of those charges are true. I think that even in his case, this was definitely a hit job. This was not just justice being done. This was a case of somebody who was a member of the club who got out of line. In that case, Cosby. I think he was making certain moves that more powerful people in the club didn't want him to make, but he was making them anyway, and so they just decided to unleash the hounds. That they decided to deploy what they had on him. And that's the thing, there's so much in celebrity culture. Blackmail is currency, and so when they have things that they can blackmail you with, then they have you over a barrel. Russell Brand, for all of his faults, doesn't seem like the kind of person who's not going to speak his mind, who's not going to speak honestly about what he thinks of the way things are right now. And that is obviously not what the powers that be, with the controllers, what the reigning ideologies want. So that's my take on it. It's definitely a hit job, but if there's truth to these allegations, then then justice should be should be done for the if, again, and it's a big if he was actually, if he actually did these much more egregious things that are alleged. If he remembers them, again, he might have been in a heroin daze. He might have been, I don't know, like that's not a defense either. But it's possible that he's denying these things honestly, while in truth he really did them, but just doesn't remember. Which is not a defense either, but it's a possibility. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts on this whole mess for your perusal and hopefully intellectual stimulation and so forth. Thanks for watching. Comment below.